There we are. Perfect. So good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are dialing in from. And thank you for your time and welcome to the first VIPP session that we have for this year. We have quite a packed agenda for today, quite an interesting agenda. So we would actually start off with some updates from the program itself, VIPP program updates. Then we'll go straight to the Parallels RAS releases. So we're going to discuss, have a quick recap of the latest releases, including 17.1, also mobile clients, and also we'll be looking more importantly to what's coming. Quite interesting to be able to share the roadmap with you guys. Following that, we also have some announcements with respect to the next VIPP summit. This is the yearly summit where we meet together. So stay tuned because we're going to announce the location where this time we'll be organizing this event. And we have quite a lot of surprises there planned as well. Finally, we will close off with some action items following today's discussion. Okay, you do have access to chat and QA during the course of the presentation. And then we're also going to have a separate section for QA if there are any questions that you would like to share as well with the rest of the audience. Perfect. So let's get started here. First of all, I would like to start off by congratulating each and every one of you, those who could join us today and also who would be listening to this recording later on. Congratulations for making part of the VIPP for 2020. And as we can see there, we have the final list. And we are so happy and excited about that we'll also be doing a public announcement later on this month. So 28th of February, we'll be using our blog and social media to actually share the message. And a small update as well there as that we are going to also update the VIPP badges. So as you know, these VIPP badges are from Acclaim, so you could share as well from your socials. We'll be updating those as we can see from the screen. But in general, thank you very much for your hard work, especially with the 17.1 release in December, where we have used our influences and our social media to share the message as well, and we did receive quite a good feedback about that. With respect to product releases, just a quick recap. Obviously, you are all aware of the latest capabilities, but I'm going to skim through all of these features here, just to jog back our memory. 17.1 was primarily focused on at organizations, larger enterprises maybe, and also service providers. In fact, we built on some of our multi-tenancy features by introducing a new multi-tenant architecture. Right, we introduced a new tenant broker concept where we are able to share the access layer. Right, so like that, we're talking about sharing the HALBs, those high available load balancers, and also the secure client gateways. The standard traditional RAS farms in a multi-tenant environment are considered as tenants. So you can have as many as different RAS farms as required, maybe representing different customers or different departments, but all sharing that front-end access. We also have good outreach for the single sign authentication. We have many customers already using this functionality. It's something that we listened to our customers and wanted to provide identity provider and service provider support. In fact, we do support both IDP and SP initiated single sign-ons with various third-party identity management solutions. And today, RAS Farm is used as an SP with the likes of Okta or the likes of Microsoft's Azure AD or Ping Identity, right? It all starts today from an HTML5 initiated authentication. Obviously, as we're going to see in RAS 18, we want to extend and build on this and extend the capabilities as well on initiating the same single sign-on experience from the native clients. Another interesting feature is the automation that we added by supporting Microsoft Azure APIs directly. So we'll be able to provision on these on Microsoft Azure, right? So the the VDI capabilities that we had for on-premises have now been also migrated to Microsoft Azure. It's very simple. The administrator would just put in the tenant, the subscription, right? We create an app, and using that app on Azure AD, we are able to choose a particular template, choose the resource group and the instance types and the disk models, right? And then we can provision as many as required. We also introduced SSL certificate management. So this is a central location to deploy and also manage these certificates, the SSL certificates on the secure client gateways and the HALBs. And another crowd-rated feature is supporting third-party load balancers like AWS ELB, the Elastic Load Balancer, where we had added the capability of using network load balancing settings and different customizations for different web cookies depending on the load balancer. Obviously, this gave us an opportunity to support other third-party load balancers as well. We continue our hyperconvergence story along with Nutanix, but this time on scale. We started with 17.0 supporting the VDI provisioning on scale, HC3, and in 17.1, we went out in public to discussing the full support of the entire stack. So VDI and RDSH provisioning, which is something that we're seeing that's quite important as well in the HCI scope. From a user's experience point of view, we have added this time drag and drop from server to client. So this builds on the drag and drop that we already had in the past from client to server. So now supporting bi-directional drag and drop. And the idea was simply to make these published resources, applications that made available for these users remotely, act and feel as if they are locally installed on the devices. And naturally, we're also supporting the latest version of SQL servers. As you know, from SQL 2017 onwards, the SSRS can be deployed on a separate SQL server. And so we do support now as well SSRS with RAS reporting service on SSRS as a separate entity than the SQL server. Okay, just skimming quickly through these updates. However, more latest now, early February, actually early this month, we also released the updated mobile clients that are relating to 17.1 and some unique functionality there that we are quite excited about and already have customers using is the support of Parallels client in Android in Samsung DeX mode. So obviously, as you know, just the ability to plug in your phone via HDMI cable to the TV or maybe external monitor or Windows device or Mac device, you basically transform that Windows, that mobile phone into a fully fledged workstation. So here, the interesting part about it is that not only you are using the capabilities of your device, but you're also using those Parallels RAS-specific capabilities that we have on Androids, such as App Switcher, you know, the local resource redirection, universal printing, bidirectional audio as well with microdirection. At this time, using it in DeX mode. So literally then, you know, transforming the way users use different devices and minimizing the amount of devices that the user requires to do their day-to-day work. And part of our focus on multitasking and productivity on iOS, we're supporting the split view and slide over, as we can see there from these screenshots, apart from supporting the latest dark mode capabilities as well. Great, so what's coming up? We start off with still part of RAS 17. This is 17.1 update 1. Actually, we are targeting to release this version in next month, early next month. The idea of updates is not to have it full of features, right? The idea of updates is to tackle stability, right? Bug fixes and issues maybe that were put forward in production environments in previous releases. However, we still are going to have the ability to put out some new features there, and some noteworthy features. Let's start off with the first one is utilizing an SMB share, SMB 3.0 actually, for Hyper-V cluster deployments. So we have noted that customers, even maybe smaller customers that did not or do not invest in a centralized SAN, maybe something like this could be of great use for them. It is simpler than iSCSI and fiber channel configuration. It's more cost effective. And obviously, we're adding more flexibility of how you can deploy VDI or RDSH based on templates on Hyper-V cluster. Okay, which from our side, we're seeing both VMware, could it be SXI or vCenter, and Hyper-V as the two main hypervisors out there in this market. We're also bringing in, and this time also improving the capability of excluding certain users or groups when we talk about 2FA or MFA, right? So before this update, we could exclude certain users by their client IP, by MAC address, or by different gateways. So you could have different access points, different gateways, maybe internal and external, and you can exclude those type of users from being forced to use 2FA or MFA. However, we will be adding back the user or group. So this gives us the ability, or gives the administrators ability to specifically choose a particular user or group to be not to have the 2FA or MFA forced when they are doing the connection. Okay, some other noticeable features as well. We had introduced Google Authenticator in version 17.0, and this time we're adding some level of control and security with it, because you could enable Google Authenticator, as we're seeing there in the screenshot bottom right, as a provider. However, you can now control when the users can enroll. So by default in the past, enrollment was open. Okay, but now you can choose to allow enrollment to a specific date and time, right? And after that, if users did not enroll, they would be faced with a notification that this account is not enrolled yet. Please contact your administrator. So this limits the any security issues that even if an account, a user account, for example, is taken control over by hackers or blockers, right? Something like this can really help out and have that level of control. Based upon customer requests, we're also adding more capabilities in our scheduler. This is a scheduler that is specific for RD session hosts to disable or reboot. So you are able to choose multiple standalone RD session hosts as well, and also configure and add more improvements there in the communication or notifications between the schedule itself and the actions that are happening. And finally, something with respect to the user's experience, and this came out from the fact that we extended the drag and drop functionality. We are also adding a progress bar. So this is a UI feedback. So if there are larger files that you want to copy, drag and drop between the client and the server, or the other way around, the users would be able to see this progress bar, giving an indication that an activity is happening, right? So they would know that that file, that action is being carried out. Okay, very good. Next, ROS 18. So this is the big major release now that we have planned for this year. We are targeting this release to be out in autumn timeframe, around October time, right? And our focus for ROS 18 is going to be those points mentioned here: the scalability of ROS, knowing that we are tackling larger and larger customer base. Cloud, we will continue building on cloud, what we have today, and much more, and I will discuss that in more detail. We will build on AI, the AI that was introduced in ROS 17, automation capability. This helps us to always differentiate as well amongst competition when we talk about simplicity of the solution. And finally, it's the performance. You will agree with me that a user's experience is critical in such environments, so that will be one of our focus areas as well for ROS 18. So let's start off by going through quickly this list of features. The scope of this call today is just an introduction of these features, looking at the main features that are marked with a star next to them, we will, of course, come summit time, go dig deeper in each and every one of these, right? And also would have the ability to showcase these features in action. So the first one is the Web Admin Console. This is the phase 2 actually of the Web Admin Console. Phase 1 was released in RAS 17 back in June, where we focused on help desk functionality, where one can use the browser to get access to the running sessions and some interactions with the sessions, like log off, disconnect, send a message, or even look at processes within the session. This time in Web Admin Console, because our plan is to start moving all the functionality, that is the plan, that is the target that we have today in the traditional desktop console to the web console, we'll be tackling the standard environment scenarios. So what do we mean by that? We'll be looking at providing capabilities to deploy and manage the publishing agents, that is the broker of the solution, the gateways, the front endpoints, are the session hosts, and not only. These are just some of the components that we'll be looking at. There will also be HALBs, high available load balancers, client policies, so on and so forth. The idea of this phase is let's try to provide all the needed capabilities out of the box for a standard environment deployment. And like that, we would start offloading our customers, our administrators to use more and more the Web Admin Console itself. As I mentioned, SAML has been quite a success story for us, SAML single sign-on. So we would like to add improvements there. So our intention is to streamline the deployment. Obviously, as you know, SAML and how we're supporting SAML using certificate-based authentication with a specific component called enrollment server. We would like to ease deployment for our customers. We'd also like to extend its support. So today, SAML is supported by going first to the HTML5 client portal and then using either HTML5 client or the Windows client. But we want to use the HTML5 client portal and then use any other client. So that's first. Secondly, we also want the ability for our customers to use the native clients directly. So the SAML single sign-on would actually be initiated from the clients themselves, rather than going always through the HTML5 client portal first. Okay. Another interesting feature is the ability to launch specific published resources directly using SAML. So think about this as the Office 365 portal. So instead of just seeing another application or app as Parallels RAS, you would actually see the Parallels RAS published resource in the list of applications. So you could have all your standard Microsoft Office applications, for example, and also other applications, maybe your ERP or any line of business application, directly in the same portal. And this would help, not tying in our customers with seeing all the applications, but from HTML5 client portal, but be more open on other portals as well. This does not limit us to also extend this functionality to other third-party portals and portals that our partners also host. And session pre-launch, something as well that we had first introduced AI in, today is on Windows clients. We would like to extend this capability as well to all the other platforms, apart from other improvements that we are exploring today to tweak this session pre-launch capability. Okay, with respect to market and customer requirements, I'm very happy to report that it is in our roadmap and we're working very hard towards completion of supporting Microsoft's own Windows Virtual Desktop, right? And our aim is to support WVD and also integrate with it. And we're going to talk about that in more detail in the coming slide. Similarly, FSLogix profile containers, you would be able to configure, enable, configure, deploy the FSLogix agent all through RAS console. Okay, and similar to what we did with the UPDs in the past, user profile disks, the administrator can simply open the console, set a specific location or locations, choose the specific size of the disk, and also customize the FSLogix experience itself by enabling, disabling certain features that we're going to be presenting as well. Another feature that we believe that would really help is the VDI and RDSH image optimizations. So I know that there are so many tools out there, Citrix tools, VMware tools, third-party tools as well, that you would run them on the workload machine to optimize, to remove any unneeded services. Right? But we said, okay, why don't we do that from the get-go? Why don't you do that as soon as you deploy the agent? Right? So we would have the ability to choose what services are to be disabled or not. Obviously, it depends on the scenario itself, but we'll be providing a complete list. And again, on this point, we'll have more information in the coming slides. With respect to transparency and management, why don't we add more session details? And session details that give administrators knowledge of what is really happening, especially with respect to the user's experience. In fact, our aim is to add, for example, round trip time, which is the duration between the action from the user and screen updates, understand latency, where is it coming from, could be coming from a network point of view or not, understand the logon duration, and even what contributed to that logon duration. So although RAS is not considered as a monitoring tool, it is very important, I believe, for administrators to get the basic understanding of what is really happening and try to understand what the user means, by the user calling them, listen, my application is running slow. What is really the culprit here? And not only that, even before the user actually suggests and says that they have an issue, the administrator has full transparency and can also be proactive when it comes to management and troubleshooting. We talked about scalability and larger customer base. We are currently targeting to scale a single RAS farm and a single RAS site up to 5,000 VDIs, right? And for that, we're looking at obviously new VDI capabilities. We're looking at stability. We're looking at any changes that are required for a UI point of view. Okay. We'll also be looking at multiple high availability load balancers per site. Today, you can have one group of load balancers grouped together as an instance with their own VIP. Obviously, traffic going to HALB is forwarded to the gateways. But having multiple HALBs could give administrators the ability to load balance maybe the internal traffic and also the external traffic. Two different groups of devices, okay, with two different virtual IPs on different networks, along with advanced configuration. So configurations that today are done manually on the appliance itself, on the load balancer itself, but in this case, we'll be adding a UI as well for the configuration, so administrator can, obviously knowing what actually is required, can they do the changes in terms of session timeouts from an HALB, connections and connection timeouts, all done from the RAS console. So this gives us as well information about where we are headed. Our load balancer is included in the same solution, and now it's time to as well invest time in it and also extend its functionality. Next, in terms of cost, again, it's a differentiating factor, one could say, with respect to the competition. We'll be adding the ability to add standalone. We're starting off with Microsoft Hyper-V in this case. So add standalone hypervisors, Hyper-V, right, servers, and you are able to centrally use one template, but under the hood will actually be using different Hyper-V hosts to run the guests, the clone machine on different nodes, on separate nodes. So this is a solution for customers who either do not have a SAN, right, or else they do not want to use the expensive SAN for VDI, but want to use the local disks. I know there is always this debate in the market, right? Should you use local disks? Should you use SAN? Now today, RAS is based on SAN, but with this capability, we're also providing the administrator with choice to use also local disks while still centrally managing one image, one template. Okay. Other improvement with respect to end user experience, definitely we're looking at HTML5. We know that many users today are multimedia, lots of multimedia consumption as well, even sometimes task workers. So it's our aim to improve the experience there in HTML5 and also any other client that we have from an RDP point of view. We'll also be supporting UDP over RDP when it comes to third-party load balancers. So today, as you know, UDP over RDP is supported and it's completely supported from Rust components. So looking at HALB, gateways, using all Rust components, you can enjoy UDP over RDP with great user experience. However, when customers use third-party load balancers, UDP itself might not work as expected. So in this case, we'll be looking at supporting UDP for third party as well. And as you can see, there is a flow. This comes as well following the AWS and other third party load balancer support. Then another quite cool feature as well is the accelerated file retrieval, right? When we're doing drive redirection. So as you know, and maybe you have experienced in the past, if you redirect the drive and try to retrieve the files and browse the files that are redirected from the drive, it's not the best experience when using RDP. Okay, so we'll be adding a mechanism here. And again, in line with what Rust does, Rust enhances the native RDS solution. And this is a good case in point where we'll be adding the functionality to accelerate cache those files and folders that are redirected when using drive redirection. Speaking about redirection, we'll be looking at special folder redirection, an ability obviously to map the desktop, for example, of the server when you open a published application to the desktop that the user have locally. Okay, so it is working more and more closer to how the user is used to. And for all our Dutch customers, we'll be adding the Dutch language for all our clients. And finally, we'll be adding the UI options for push, for call, for SMS, right? When we're using Radius. So take an example, Duo. Today we support Duo via Radius, and Duo itself has the ability to use various delivery methods of how to deliver the challenge, or maybe just using push. And what we're going to do is ability for administrator to assign a specific key or a specific character that would signify a push. And on the end user side, what they would see is the push icon. User can click on the push icon and the push notification is received on the mobile that was configured on the mobile device. And once approved, then be able to move forward. Right? And with that, there's also lots of configuration of for example, remembering the last choice, just for the idea to make it very smooth and very easy for the users to get access, even when you're adding certain level of security. Great. So let's look closer at some of the main features. And obviously, one cannot mention main features without mentioning Windows Virtual Desktop, right? So our idea is very simple. We would like to, and I know that we mentioned this in our last VIPP summit, it's not about just having Rust agent on the workload machine on the Windows 10 multi-session, for example, or Windows Server side, because that's already works today. But the idea is to forward all the necessary traffic to the Windows Virtual Desktop service, okay? But before that, we would also like to unify the admin experience. So from the console, the idea is to guide the administrator to provide the server and client consent. We're looking at tenant groups, maybe retrieve if a tenant group is already available based on the tenant or subscription that the customer provided, or create the tenant group. We're looking at the moment one per farm. Same for the tenants, we'll be able to retrieve or create the tenants, one per farm as well. Host pools, creation of host pools, creation of hosts within the host pools. And for this, we'll also be looking at the current VDI capabilities that we have and extend these to the host pools themselves. And then finally, app groups. Obviously, we'll be adding apps in these app groups, remote apps or desktop, and then publishing. So that gives the administrator a unified experience if they're using maybe on premises, if they now it's starting to use Windows Virtual Desktop, right? All under a single pane of glass. This means that, as we can see from this screenshot on the right-hand side, Windows Virtual Desktop would be another type where users can publish resources from. Okay. Now, the story continues on the other side from an end user point of view. And our idea is as well to provide a single access portal, or from the clients, from RAS clients themselves, they would see all the different published resources, irrespective if they're coming from Windows Visual Desktop or if they're coming from traditional, I'll call them like that, traditional RAS environments. And for this, we are also working with Microsoft. We are currently awaiting some confirmations to see how we can make sure that we deliver the right unified users experience. Right. In general, I'm not going to go into each added value in detail, but in general, what we see in front of us is the flexibility that we'll be providing. So we're talking about any cloud on Microsoft Azure or other clouds on premises as well, or hybrid clouds, the management added value there, where you provide everything in a single pane of glass. Business continuity as well. Why? Because you can deploy these RAS gateways, for example, on premises as well, in case of any disruptions. Cost control, maybe you want to shift some workloads from cloud to on-prem or vice versa. Functionality itself, so the functionality, the universal printing, the specific proprietary capabilities that the clients offer, the management capabilities, even in session management, and all those session details that I mentioned before would also come in play here, and added users experience as well. Now here, as you can see, top left, I am putting forward a question maybe that you could help us out with, in case you are aware of any technical limitations today at Windows Virtual Desktop side where you could see RAS adding value. So if you are aware, say for example, Windows Virtual Desktop in terms of image management would need partners out there to support, to actually extend the capabilities. Please put these forward, put your answers forward so that we'll actually look at these, right? And also try to include as best we can for the upcoming release. Next, image optimization. So the idea, as I said, is provide a built-in tool, this time not a separate tool, and during the deployment of the workload machines as well, you are able to configure these at the site level, at the template level, or a standalone. And we're also going to provide an option, automatic or manual. So by automatic, the administrator would trust Parallels, right, to enable specific customizations for optimizations, while manually we'll provide a huge list there. As we could see, we only can see there the categories. So in each category, we'll have lots and lots of different services, right? So let's take an example, Windows services. There's Teams service, there's geolocation services, Windows updates. These can all be disabled upon request as well. But to make sure that we cover everything, we're also providing the ability for administrator to upload their custom scripts. Maybe they already have some scripts that are optimizing the workload machines. Let's have those scripts in here, and when we do the deployment, we run those scripts. So it's similar to post-deployment optimization. And here again, we do have a question. What are, maybe from your experience in the field, those common and more popular optimizations, right, that you could suggest for RDSH? And also, if I can add to that question, maybe different optimizations for RD session hosts and VDIs, in a many-to-one scenario and one-to-one scenario. Very good. FS Logics, profile containers, as we said, it's our aim to support, and not just the profile containers, and also Cloud Cache support, right? With single or multiple locations for RD session hosts and VDIs. So we will be providing ability for the administrator to choose how to deploy the FS Logics agent. If it's manually, maybe online using the supported version from a network share, so they can download the FS Logics agent and have a sort of version control from the RDSH or VDI, or there's also another option here to upload the current FSLogix agent version to the RAS publishing agent, and then we'll distribute centrally the agents to these machines. And the reason for that is that there could be some workload machines that do not have internet access. FSLogix agent can be updated as required, right? So if there's a new version, the administrator intervenes and say, I want to update agent, maybe a reboot in that case would be required, and that can be scheduled as in any other update over there. There's configuration at the RDSH level and the VDI level. We're going to add the ability to include, exclude users. And again, similar to the optimizations, we're going to have a list of advanced settings, right? So settings, looking at, do you want to allow concurrent user sessions or not for the same user? ROM searches, are we going to prevent logons if there's a temp profile? Are we going to keep local profiles, or shall we delete the local profiles? There's a whole list, obviously, as you are aware, and we're going to make the ones that are more interesting and the ones that are used a lot in this scenario available directly from here. Okay, and with respect to that, some other questions that we are putting forward here, maybe you are aware of some popular customizations that customers do usually, obviously done today at FSLogix side from the registry, that we for sure need to include in the advanced settings. Please feel free to send these over to us. Currently, customers using user profile disks can still continue to work. We will have that ability, and they can choose then to move from a UPT to FSLogix. There's no really migration part. It's simply choose what technology you will be using. And the idea is very simple, that we do not see user profile disk as the future, but rather this time FSLogix profile containers as the future there. And we can see from the left-hand side, it's just a mock-up where we see the location type, if it's an SMB location, and different locations, maybe for HA purposes, the format, size, and type of disk. And the advanced settings is where we're going to show all these different registry values that can be changed, but this time from the UI. Other questions that we had in mind, maybe that you could help us in, to see if there are any maybe preferred installation methods that customers are using today. I mean, from what I mentioned, what would you think would be a preferred solution, manually, online network share, or centrally pushed? If usually customers just deploy FSLogix agent and keep it running, or is it more that customers would keep the agent up to date? So if there's a new release, they will update their current agents. Obviously, I would assume it depends on the functionality, but it would be good to get your feedback there. And the final question, are downgrades usually performed? So we understand that best practices, when you're doing downgrades, you would uninstall and install in this case. So I want to see from your experience if you get customers that do downgrades as well on FSLogix. And final slide here. There we are. Final slide on RAS 18 itself with respect to new functionality. We talked about session details. Again, this is where maybe your experience would be very, very helpful here, and identify any specific metric that could be very interesting or that you look at even when using other monitoring tools, right? So this is the primary list here that we're looking at. The round trip time, as I mentioned, that could be a measurement of the lag when the users say it is running slow. Network latency, we already have this on the client side. We will be bringing this up to the server side as well. Logon duration and breakdown. Connection flow, something quite interesting when you have different components like HALBs, gateways, and maybe as well forwarding gateways. The administrator would like to know how that user reached the workload machine, that are RDSH or VDI. And we would be able to look at all these steps, and we are able to look at the first connection. So let's take the worst case scenario here. You have the HALB, a forwarding gateway, and the gateway, a normal gateway. So we'll be able to look at all the access layer, essentially, the first connection, which is the HALB, the last connection, which is the gateway, and the one before the last, which is the forwarding gateway. And like that, we would have the whole chain. And if there are any issues in any of these, it will help administrator to understand better why that user maybe complained or there was an issue there. We'll be adding counters on session reconnects, okay, and reconnects due to network issues, and also we'll be providing a disconnected reason. Right? So last disconnected reason was due to maybe it was unexpected. Okay. Session bandwidth utilization, how much user consumed from bandwidth in that session, type of user profiles that are being used, maybe FS logics, maybe user profile this, or others, like roaming profiles for the directions, those will fall under others. Client type, client version and client build, we have this already there, but not included in the session details, but in a separate screen. So we'll be bringing them in the session details. And finally, we do have a column for protocol. And today that protocol shows RDP. We want to be more precise and understand if it's TCP or UDP. So this will help a lot administrators looking at the session details and knowing that this user actually have a running session and it's running over UDP over RDP. And here the question that I want to put forward, if there are any other session related metrics that we should consider to be added, please send this forward. We'll be happy to explore and also add these over there. And finally, of course, we'll be looking at some deprecated operating systems and components. All right, we're starting off with deprecation of Windows 2008, 32 or 64-bit for all RAS components except for a terminal server or a remote desktop session host. Right, so you wouldn't be able to install a PA or a gateway, right, on 2008 server, but you would still obviously support our DSH and terminal server. Would drop Hyper-V 2008 R2 and 2012 as well. This is all based on our feedback from customers, the customer experience program itself, right? If there's any red flags there that we should be aware, please let us know. Obviously, Hyper-V will continue to be supported from 2012 R2 and above. We also know that if you migrate 2008 or 2008 R2 to Azure, Microsoft is providing additional 3 years of security updates there. And in fact, these will continue to be supported, but not from a Hyper-V point of view, or in the case of 2008, all components except the TS or RDSH role. We'll also be dropping the KVM and the VDI appliance, and also the Citrix hypervisor as a VDI provider. Okay, so as you could see, the focus is shifting from an on-premise, from the VMware and Hyper-V, the hyper-converged solution with Nutanix and Scale for the time being, and cloud with Microsoft Azure, but not just Azure, but as well Windows Virtual Desktop support. From an application container point of view, we'll be dropping the ability to retrieve Turbo.NET public applications. Okay, of course, you can still run Turbo.NET separately. And the idea for this is also to make some room for MSIX app attach as well. That is something that we are seeing, maybe not in RAS 18, but in the future. Mobile clients update from Android 4 and below won't be supported for the latest version for RAS 18 clients. Obviously, older clients would still be able to use the 17.x mobile client version. And from a PowerShell point of view, we received your feedback as well, and we'll be doing some changes, renaming of the PowerShell module from generic PS admin to RAS admin, right, the module itself. And we'll also be adding RAS in the commandlets as well. So we will be able to, apart from the module, of course, because that you would need to import the new module, but with respect to the old commandlets and new commandlets, we want to make sure that backward compatibility remains. So we'll be adding actually aliases there, even when using the old commands in the new RAS admin module. Okay, super. Some updates on the VIPP summit, the upcoming summit, and I said that we'll be announcing where the summit will take place, and most probably you would like the location. And let me see if you can actually realize what location is this. This is where actually I am calling from. This is Malta, yeah, and this VIPP summit for 2020 will be held in Malta. This was one of the first summits that we did before we went to Russia and to the US. So now back to Malta. So I would be happy to see all the ones that were here before, and also the newer ones that, and always obviously invited. And these are the dates that we are targeting. We'll start off with Monday, 15th June, right? This is the week after the E2EVC event of Alex Cooper. So if you are going there, you can just come straight after Spain. We will be at the E2E event as well, and that's what we'll be doing. The idea is that in the evening we have some drinks, some nibbles, some chats there. The actual VIPP summit will be held on Tuesday, 16th June, right? And then obviously followed that by a dinner in the evening. Then Wednesday, 17th June, we'll have some activities as we usually do. This time, not just around Malta, but we're actually going to our sister island in Gozo as well. So lots of fun there. I won't divulge what we're going to do there, although you can have some hints from the images that we're showing over there. Some of you might need to fly out that day or the following day on the 18th of June. Right, we'll be sending a placeholder, most probably by end of week, maybe tomorrow, right, for you to lock in the dates, and from then we'll actually require your feedback in terms of registration, so that we lock it in. Awesome. So before going to Q&A session, I know I did see some messages coming up, so I will go through those. Some action items, right? I will be sharing this recording and the slide deck. It would be very interesting if we could receive feedback from your side with respect to RAS 17.1 features. So we talked about the summit, we talked about Microsoft Azure VDI, the Sage provisioning. Please test this out, give us your feedback. As you know, we take your feedback very seriously, and we would improve the product as we go along, even on features, obviously, that's already out there in the market. Then we talked about some questions that we put forward with respect to Windows Visual Desktop, image optimization, FSLogix Pro for containers, and session details. I grouped all the questions in one page here. So any value, any tips from your experience that could help, for RAS 18, now that we are scoping RAS 18 itself, would be very beneficial. And finally, with respect to VIPP Summit, please confirm your availability and register to it. As we did last year, we had sessions with where we provided information about the upcoming releases, but also we had great sessions coming from you guys, right? Coming from, for example, Benny Trish, and coming from Christian Brinkhoff, right? Talking about new capabilities. And one of them was actually, I remember, Benny, your session was relating to protocols and users experience, and we want to actually focus on it a lot in RAS 18. And Christian Brinkhoff was with respect to FSLogix there, right? And we have that in RAS 18. So let's choose, let's do a bit of brainstorming. We choose 3 different topics that could help the next upcoming versions. And please send these topics to us, the topics that you feel that could be really helpful, right? Maybe more detail on new technologies out there or emerging technologies that we could look at by the 10th of April, so that we would start preparing for the presentation for the VIPP Summit. Great. So I did receive some questions here. Very good with respect to Windows Visual Desktop. I believe that is something that is quite hot at the moment, and it is our aim to support it. Obviously, we are currently awaiting confirmation from Microsoft on certain items with respect to getting access to the feed on the client side. But in the meantime, we are working on the backend side in terms of those host pool, app groups, creations, right? And making everything in one single pane of glass. With respect to answers on hybrid deployment, Windows Virtual Desktop and on premises. That's something, yes, that we are definitely, thank you, Benny, for highlighting that, looking at extending the capabilities, right? So as we are aware, the Windows Virtual Desktop workload machines on Azure Stack on-premise is something that will be with us in the future. I believe at the moment it is in private preview, right? Still, the control plane is hosted on Azure. Our aim is to easily help users to migrate as well. So if they have an on-premise deployment, yeah, why not use the same technology, same tools that you have today, but add these new services, and you can actually spin up new machines and you can control where to deploy from, right? Apart obviously from out of the box supporting these hybrid deployments. MSIX app attach is something that we should keep in mind. I do agree that would be something that we'll look at after. So profile containers first, then we have to see with regards to Office containers as well. And after that is definitely app attach. At the moment, it's targeted for the following version, but it depends also on the availability, obviously, depending on the workload itself. And thank you for a note here with regards to built-in migration from roaming profile to FS logics. Maybe that is something that we can also explore. All right, very good. In the meantime, we'll be using Slack and emails, as usual, for our communication. I do encourage you to be more and more on Slack. We are sending both information on Slack and email, but sometimes from a communication standpoint, for collaboration, we do find Slack as a useful tool. As we mentioned, if there is any other tool that you are interested in, we can also explore that. I will send over this presentation along with the recordings, and it would be great if you would give us some more feedback following the questions that we put forward. Very good. We actually finished 5 minutes ahead of time. So thank you very much for your time. I look forward to actually not for the next sync up online, but actually face-to-face in the summit. Yeah, so thanks again, and yeah, hopefully see you soon. Thank you.